Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I want to say we want to thank everyone on the iHeartRadio network, the number one media network in the United States, and also Big C Sports, the number one sports program in the universe. Also, I want to give a good shout out to Latin America. So thank you so much. And bienvenidos for following Charlton and Big C Sports, and of course across the pond and in London, and also England, Big C in Paris. And I want to say, of course, I apologize so much to my good friends from Canada because I've been chewing up your voice. I've been tuning up your song with my voice, so I apologize for that. But I do want to say I love you, Canada. But Big C, there's no one I love more than the land of the free and the home of the brave. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Chilly down here, you know. I thought I was living up in the Northwest or something the past couple of days. You know, the temperature dropped, everything has changed. I'm going to have to worry about not having my son where I can get a tan for the next couple of days, something. But, you know, it's the weekend, so, you know, the coffee's on. I can spice it with a little moonshine and keep myself warm.
Nothing wrong with keeping yourself warm, Big C. We're actually doing our show. We're live remote out here in Northern California. There's a beautiful river here in Sacramento called the Sacramento River, and the Kings have a game tonight. They're actually playing the LA Clippers, but there's a great environment here in Sacramento. You can see the Tower Bridge and also the downtown mall next to Old Sacramento if you've ever been in California, and the Kings have the beautiful Golden One Center is just a couple of blocks away. But I also want to say, Big C, there's so much happening in the world of sports this weekend. We know we have some big football tipping off, especially if you love playoff football. And I'm so excited about the games. And just because you're a wild card game and a wild card team, it does not mean that you don't have the ability to win a game, you know, on the road even in the first week. Just your thoughts on who you think has a chance to win on the road, whether it be down in Houston or up in Green Bay. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, I'm talking, you think about the wild card game, and over the history of the NFL, many wild card teams have gone on to win a Super Bowl. The first one was the Oakland Raiders, Charlton. You know, under Jim Plunkett, they went down and won a Super Bowl as a wild card team when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
And the New York Giants have done it twice in beating the New England Patriots. So being a wild card team, Charlton, does not mean that you're a favorite going into the playoffs. Playoffs, we know about being hot.
Yeah.
Now, the game down in Houston this week, you know, Charlton, you know, everybody was loving the Raiders during the regular season. You know, they were a great comeback story in the NFL, having missed the playoffs for over 10 years and coming back, retooling the team, having a fine young quarterback and Derek Carr, but breaking his leg.
Oh, yeah.
And the second to the final game of the season, Charlton, and that just was a dismal cast over the Raiders because then when their backup quarterback, McGloin, got hurt, Charlton,
oh, yeah.
it really left them with a third-string starting rookie who had really never had any NFL experience, and we know how treacherous that can be on rookie quarterbacks in the NFL when you look at a couple of the top draft picks in the league this year, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, you know, Osweiler really hasn't lit the world on fire down in Houston either. But I got to give an advantage to Houston with the defense that they have, and they're playing a rookie quarterback who is untested, who hasn't seen that many live reps, Charlton. So when you're in a do-or-die situation such as Houston and Oakland are this weekend,
yeah.
I like Houston because they can do more defensively to rattle the young quarterback than what Oakland can do. Even though Osweiler is inconsistent, he's still a step better than Cook for Oakland, Charlton.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Big C. Today's show is also sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, Big C, this thing about this mud thing, I know it's going to be raining, so you probably at least get a car wash. You know, you ever have a dog and the dog goes out and gets all muddy, Big C, but you got to bring that dog back in the house, so you got to wash him off with the water hose. Is that what you look like going through the car washes, Big C?
What do you mean you got to let this dog in the house?
Yeah.
That's what the porch is for. You get a dog and be a guard dog. I don't know anything about a pet. He got to earn a living. You know, he can't be looking around the house and get into luxury. He got to work. I can't afford a alarm system, so that's why I feed him, okay?
That's funny.
We know when people start. So, you know, having a little mud on it is just par for the course.
You remind me, remember the great comedian Richard Pryor he did so many skits, a lot funnier than what I could do. But I remember he had these dogs, and he said all he did was ate and then went to the restroom to do number 2, right? And one time he was calling his dogs because he wanted them to do something, and he said, "What's he calling me for? Didn't we already eat?" That must remind me when I hear about dogs and wanting to come into the house. But a good thing about the Raiders this weekend, that here in Northern California, the Raiders haven't won a road playoff game since 1980, and that's when you talked about them going to the Super Bowl and beating up on the Philadelphia Eagles. But for a franchise that has 3 championships, 2 in Oakland and 1 in LA, and for them to go into the playoffs and to have not won a game, Big C, since 1980, even though these players weren't even they weren't even around at the time, Big C, does that even stick in the mind of the organization, Big C?
Well, Charlton, when you really look at the organization, who was around? Mark Davis, the owner.
Yeah.
And he was a king at that time, Charlton. So, any of that former history of the Raiders really doesn't exist in the program nowadays, Charlton. That just man mentality that Al had instilled in his organization since its inception.
Yeah.
He was the head coach and general managing partner, becoming the sole owner eventually of that organization. But the silver and black is the only thing that's left, Charlton, of what the Raiders once were. Okay, all of those bad boys that they used to have. I mean, the Raiders were the party insignia of the NFL for a long, long time. They were also, people thought of it as the most vicious team. And you can't say dirty, because back in the day, you were just vicious.
Yeah, they called it vicious back then. That's right, Big C. That's true.
So they were intimidating on both sides of the ball. And that's some of what they were trying to bring back this year, Johnson. When you look at the winning attitude and mentality that they brought back into the organization.
Yeah.
Leaning back into the old-time Raiders, those guys are long gone. But, to come back and to build that winning heritage, they're not the intimidators what they once were, Johnson.
Yeah.
But they're winners like they once were.
Well, Big C, I think that's a good point you bring up. And just even looking at the game, we'll go over all the games that are happening this week in beautiful downtown Sacramento and old Sacramento by the Sacramento River. And we look at the game, and we have Oakland 12-4 with a great record to be 12-4, and they're also an underdog in the first round of the playoff game. Saturday at 4:35 p.m. start Eastern Time on ESPN, and you have the great Sean McDonough, and then John Gruden, who coached the Raiders when they were in the playoff, and then Lisa Salters on the play-by-play. Now, think about Las Vegas when you think about games like this. The last time the 2 teams played, they were down in Mexico, and the Raiders won that game. This game has the Texans favored by 3 points with a quarterback that's been benched in 2 organizations, Denver and also Houston, and Brock Osweiler. Now, the over-under is 36 points. Big C, tell me where both teams are going to get to the point where they can put 36 points on the board when offensively both of their quarterbacks don't have any experience, especially when it comes to playoffs, Big C.
Well, Charlton, you look at both of these quarterbacks, and, Osweiler, we've known his lack of productivity over the season, having averaged 200 yards a game as a passer. Cook, the mid-round draft pick out of Michigan State.
Yeah.
They said he had this big arm and all this potential, but he went late, mid-round in the draft, Charlton.
Yeah.
And he didn't challenge for a starting job. When you look at Oakland, they didn't have any number 1 draft pick in their quarterback, rotation. But Cook never challenged. He didn't even challenge LeBron, so he came in as number 3 and stayed at number 3. So that lets you know what they thought about him overall. Even though they kept him on the roster, he's never really challenged for playing time. But, when you look at these offenses, Charlton, you got to find some firepower, and it's just not there. Oakland both teams actually have an excellent receiving core.
Yeah.
And a decent ground game. But they don't have the quarterbacks that can push the ball down the field, Charlton, and challenge the secondary.
Yeah.
So that's what you look at in these games. It's going to be a defensive standoff. It's going to be who makes the mistake is going to lose the game. And I think that, Cook will go out there and try to play conservatively at first.
Yeah.
But, he's going to feel the need to try to make a big play. And I think that's what's going to cost him in trying to make a big play, Charlton, in the game.
And, when you look at the offensive firepower, you do have, on the Raiders' offensive side of the ball, they have 3 all-pro linemen on the offensive line, even though one of them is going to miss the game. But when we look at the running game, you said they have to establish a running game. When you look at the Texans, you have Lamar Miller. He rushed for 1,073 yards. And also you have Alfred Blue, who added 420 yards. When it comes to the Raiders, they have Latavius Murray, who had 788 yards. And also 1,700 combined with DeAndre Washington and also Jalen Richard. So they have also 573 yards catching the ball. The short passing game, if Oakland has a chance, keep Connor Cook out of trouble, maybe even put him in the shotgun, let him go a 2 or 3 step drop and get rid of the ball, and maybe throw 5 and 10 yard passes, but definitely not going 30 and 40 yards down the field like Carr. Your thoughts on that, Big C?
Well, Connor Cook, you talked about John Gruden during the game, and John Gruden projected him as a first-round draft pick, okay?
Yeah.
But that's how high he had Connor Cook evaluated.
Yeah.
And we knew he fell to the 4th, 5th round.
Well, how was Gruden so wrong, though, Big C? How was in Gruden's calling this game? That's a good point you bring up. They keep talking about Gruden being a good coach, but how did he get so wrong on Cook?
Well, that's part of him broadcasting this game. He's going to talk about how he assessed the guy and how he felt, and the Raiders got a steal on him. The only way the Raiders could have a steal on Connor Cook, Jonathan, is goes out there and throws for 250 to 300 yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns, and the Raiders win.
Yeah.
That's the only way you can justify him being a steal. Other than that, he's stealing money. Because we know that the NFL is laden full of backup quarterbacks, and that's the reason why they're backup quarterbacks, because they don't challenge anybody for a starting job.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking the young man. I'm just saying that here it is, Gruden sold him before the draft.
Yeah.
How great he would be and how much of an upside he would be for the organization. Now his upside time is here, Chelsea. You gotta go out and you gotta deliver. Everybody's not gonna be a Dak Prescott, okay?
Yeah.
They said that Jared Goff and Carson Wentz would be, but neither one of them were. But Dak Prescott proved all these naysayers wrong. Who said he was just a late round draft pick and hoped to make somebody's roster.
Yeah.
So he made the NFL season, not somebody's roster, Jonathan. He made the NFL season great by making the Dallas Cowboys relevant. Connor Cook, this is an opportunity to show the world and the Oakland Raiders you deserve to be on the roster next year.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. Another thing when you look at in the matchup, the Raiders, their edge rushers, Khalil Mack. I know you've been very high on Khalil Mack, even when he played at Buffalo and had a great game against Ohio State. And you look at him versus Bruce Irvin, and with Bruce Irvin versus the Texas offensive line, Dwayne Brown and also Chris Clark, Oakland has at least a sack in the last couple of games. They're very good at putting pressure on the passer, Big C. I don't see Osweiler as a guy that can get out of the pocket. He tends to trust his arm too much. But the thing that may help Oakland is I think you can at least count on Osweiler throwing 2 picks in this game. Defensively, both teams are kind of struggling defensively, even though Houston, by numbers, has the number 1 rush defense in the league. Doesn't make any sense because they're not that dominant. Do you see that defensive line for Houston being able to hold down that Raider rushing attack, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's not so much the defensive line. You got Vince Wilfork up there in the middle.
400 pounds. Yeah, that's 2 men.
He's 3 guys by himself.
Yeah, okay, I called it 2. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cheat him in size, Big C.
That's 3 players by himself, But they've always had a question mark with Clowney at defensive end, and there was toss-up a couple years ago during the draft.
Yeah.
Was Clowney go number 1 or Mack go number 1? And I told everybody Mack was the better player. Everybody said, no, Clowney's been the best player coming out of high school. No, he had 1 highlight play in college for South Carolina against
Michigan. Yeah.
Down in Jacksonville in a bowl game, Charles. That was it. That's the only hit he ever had in college. You think about it. This sophomore year in college, Charles, he had 11 sacks.
Yeah.
Okay, and everybody saw nothing but greatness. But they forgot to think about when he had those 11 sacks, Charles, 8 of them came in the first 5 games of the season.
Yeah.
So he basically had 8 games where he had 3 sacks. And so, where was Clowney after that point? And in his junior year, Charles, he had 2 sacks.
Yeah.
They said people were keying on it. No, they weren't. They didn't even have to worry about whether he was on the field. And that's how he's been in Houston. But Mack has been an all-pro player, a rookie of the year on defense. So he has delivered the goods for Oakland. So the pressure will come from him. Houston has an outstanding linebacking core, and they don't get any credit.
Yeah.
Led by Brian Cushing, Charles.
Yeah, out of USC. Yeah.
One of the more outstanding linebacking cores in the NFL. They get to the ball, and when you have Vince Wilfork holding up 2 to 3 players all the time as an anchor on that end of the line,
Yeah.
it makes it very easy for those linebackers to flow, and that's what is one brains for Houston this year, Charles, is their linebacking core.
Yeah, and you talked about that too. You mentioned Watt's not there. They have Clowney, who's playing a little bit better. had a breakout campaign after moving to defensive end. And then you have the linebackers you talked about. I think that's a good point with Woolfolk. You said he's 3 people. I said he's only 2, Big C, but he's hard to tackle no matter what. So you got to run outside of him and don't let him be the reason that you win or lose a game. And of course, the Raiders, though, their defense, even though they've been much maligned, they're number 2 in the league in takeaways. They have 30 takeaways this season, and they've surrendered 400-plus games like 5 times this season. That's why I think a lot of people are down on the Raiders' defense, but they do have the chance to make big plays, and that might help them in this game. And also, speaking of games, this segment is sponsored by the California Lottery. What can a buck do for you? And tonight's Mega Millions over $100 million. So, Big C, I've already claimed that we won that. And now that we won it, Big C, we don't have to pay the IRS because Donald Trump gets away with it. Don't you think we should follow his path, Big C?
Well, we just fall under the dollar.
Yeah.
That's all we do. We just claim the amount of money we lost winning it, Dalton.
Yeah.
We invested that much money, winning that much money, so it's a wash.
That's funny, Big C. That's funny. And speaking of a wash, another game that I'm not so sure if home field advantage has more importance than any game in this playoff run this year than the Seattle Seahawks being at home with a 10-5-1 record versus the Detroit Lions, which are 9-7, and they limped into the playoffs, Big C, even as a wild card. That game is Saturday, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC Sports, and the great Al Michaels is going to be there. I hope he doesn't catch any of those fish that Julio Jones was trying to catch when he was there, Big C. But the great Al Michaels is doing that along with, Chris Collinsworth and also Michelle Tafoya and Heather Cox. So they had another person step into the broadcast with that, Big C. Now at home, the Seahawks are favored by 8. The over-under is 43. Is that too many points for a team that hasn't really scored more than 2 or 3 touchdowns in the game, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you really have to look at Seattle's offense, Charles. When will they take off? All year long they struggled. Russell Wilson has never been 100% as a quarterback. And without his mobility, it has really hurt the Seattle's offense. But even more so, Charles, they just never had a running game. When you look at it, they've had no consistent running game to count on. This shows how valuable Marshawn Lynch was to that offense.
Beast mode. Yeah.
During that Super Bowl run. But they thought that Tubman was doing at the beginning of the year. He got banged up, and when the job was put in his hands, he just wasn't able to deliver. He showed that he was a backup running back instead of a key role running back in the NFL. But when Russell got hurt with that knee injury early in the year, then he had the ankle. It just slowed him down. Jimmy Graham has never been the player that they thought he would be since that trade from New Orleans. And they gave him an all-pro center, Max Unger.
Oh, yeah.
To bring him over, Charlton. And so that really hurt the offensive line. But even more so, Seattle has been playing with 2 rookies on the offensive line. And at a key position, Charlton, their left offensive tackle was a free agent. And he was a former basketball player in college and never played in college football. Yeah. And so when you think about the challenges that they've had trying to keep an offensive line intact with 2 rookies and one who had never played football before, starting in the NFL, and you think about how great a talent that he is to do that. Yeah. But learning on the job, Charlton, and all that pressure that's there. But Seattle, they have to come together in this game because Detroit will come play lights out football, Charlton, because they know this is it for them on the road. Yeah. And they had a chance to lock up the division and get a first-round bye and let that get away. You know they don't have any second chances going to Seattle, so they have to get off to a quick start and play some defense. Yeah, in fact, they lost that game at home in Detroit, and then they're going on the road to probably the loudest place in the NFL to play. But I want to look at the wide receiver matchups. You have Golden Tate versus the Seattle Seahawks, Richard Sherman. Now, we know Sherman can shut down anybody, it seems. Maybe he's lost a step over the last 2 years, Big C, but he's still a great player. They even had him returning kickoffs or punts last week. They don't want to see that anymore. But your thoughts on Richard Sherman? Is he still the shutdown corner like a Deion Sanders was back in the prime, Big C? Well, Charlton, everybody in the NFL is a shutdown corner except if you're San Francisco 49ers.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay? Yeah.
But, he had a great couple years of a run. He was like a Del Rivers with no one challenging. Yeah. But, that fear factor no longer exists from opposing teams. They will go after Richard Sherman. Sherman is the one who has to play defense. Offenses are not worried about it because, when you look at Seattle, they're on top Thomas is the key factor that they've lost in safety.
Oh, yeah, with the broken leg, yeah.
You don't have that safety, that policeman in the middle of the field, Charlton, that can control the defense, that can set the defensive backs in the right position, who is recognizing what opposing offenses are doing. Sherman got a lot of publicity, but Earl Thomas was the key that made that secondary go in Seattle. And if you look at how they played, Charlton, without Thomas in there, you can tell how important he was with the amount of points and big plays that they've given up in the secondary.
Yeah, and you want to give that credit also to Coach Carroll and what they've done defensively. Even though, remember last year they started the season without signing a Chancellor, and then they got off to 2 losses, Big C. And now when they got that turned around, they lose another guy in Thomas. I think they're all very valuable, and the way they play as a team has really helped Seattle, dominate the NFC over the last 3 or 4 years, Big C. But I think we're going to see, like you're right, if Seattle falls behind, I'm not so sure that they can come back against this team. Stafford, I don't think is a better quarterback than Wilson. Of course, you look at the Super Bowls, but if Seattle falls behind, they don't have a running game, and you can't just rely on the passing game to get first downs. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, they just don't have it, Charlton. This is not a comeback team. This is a team that has to play defense close to the best, and the offense has to make one time and get the points when they can.
Yeah.
The receiving core is good. Baldwin is an excellent receiver. He's really developed into one of the NFL elite receivers. He doesn't get the publicity because of where he plays on the West Coast, and we just know that teams on the East going to dominate publicity-wise.
Yeah.
But Baldwin is an excellent receiver. And as we say, they don't have the balance in the offense that they've had in past years. That has been the Achilles heels for the Seattle Seahawks. You got to have that offensive balance. And in the playoffs, you must have a running game, Charlton. These are the 2 most inept running games in the entire playoffs between the Seahawks and the Lions.
Yeah.
Each one has a presence at running back. So it's going to be which quarterback has a high hand, Charlton, that will decide the victory in this game.
And do you know this is the first time since 2011 that Seattle has not allowed the fewest amount of points in the NFL? That shows you that over time, and you talk about it all the time, Big C, no matter how good you are, every year it takes a little bit out of you because they still have good players, but they're all about 3 years and 4 years older. But to dominate the league since 2011, being the most difficult defense to score against, you think about linebackers like Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, they're always underrated, but this team has been so good over the years, even a slight drop-off, people tend to notice, Big C. But do you think this might be Seattle's last run before they start trying to move some of these players around? Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, you're always going to move players through the salary cap implications. But it's a matter of how you tinker with them, Charlton. And when you look at that offensive line, as we say, they got 2 young guys on the offensive line. One wasn't drafted, so he's not making enough money to buy a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
So when you think about that...
Are you saying they're going to be smokeless in Seattle or sleepless in Seattle? Which one is it, Big C?
But Russell Wilson has a cap-friendly contract. He understood that it was about the team. On the defense, they just re-signed Bennett, the defensive lineman, Charlton, to a new 3-year deal, but it was cap-friendly also.
Yeah.
So, they'll restructure a couple of contracts on the team, move in a few integral parts that they need. Hopefully they'll get out in free agency and get 1 or 2 key components. The draft is always there. You can always find a sleep in the draft, and Pete Carroll has been known for that because being an excellent college coach, he really knows how to evaluate talent and bring it into that organization. But I don't know if they're at the end of their run because the quarterback is not that old, Charlton.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson still has another 7, 8, 6 years left on his legs and his arms in the NFL. So if they can keep Russell Wilson healthy, that's the cornerstone of their franchise. And as soon as he goes, the team will go. And we saw he had a sluggish year this year. He finished as the hottest quarterback in the history of the NFL in the last half of last NFL season. And this year came out with injury right off the back.
Yeah.
He was never able to get his game going at the way he ended last season.
Well, when you look at that defensive lines coordinator, Terrell Austin, he's done a nice job overall. But if you think about this team, the Lions, Big C, they've been burned for 73 points and more than 800 yards in the last 2 weeks. That just doesn't get it. And also, we talked about how good Russell Wilson could be. Opposing quarterbacks against the Lions in the last 2 weeks, 106.5 passer rating against Detroit. And now they have to go up into the great Northwest and try to get a win in Seattle. So I don't think they'll be sleepless in Seattle after this game. I think Pete Carroll's going to rest heavy, and he's going to have a good game against the Detroit Lions. Also, Big C, another great matchup, potentially great matchup, the Miami Dolphins at 10-6. One of those old historic teams that you just love. seeing them in the playoffs. It seems to be a little bit better when the NFL has the Dolphins in the playoffs. But they're at the Pittsburgh Steelers 11-5. That game is Sunday, and that's a 1:05 p.m. start Eastern time on CBS Sports. The great Jim Nantz and Phil Simms, along with Tracy Wolfson and Jay Feely. It seems all the broadcast crews are adding another side reporter for this game. Now the Steelers are favored by 10, even though they got beat by the Dolphins down in Miami earlier this season. And the over/under in this game is 45. Now the Steelers, they can get 45 on their own, Big C. I think that's as low under/over for these teams. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing about the Steelers, Charlton, in this game is can they get a pass rush on Moore? He's going to be the key in this game. I think that Moore will come out and have an excellent passing game against the Steelers secondary. Now, the key is also Ajayi. We know he ran for well over 200 yards
200.
last time they met. But the one thing the Steelers didn't have when that game ended, Charlton, was Ben Roethlisberger. If you remember,
he was hurt
in that game, and he missed 3 or 4 games with the knee injury. He had to have himself scoped. So if they can stay clean in this game, Charlton, if this offensive line can keep the Dolphins pass rush, and also with the Dolphins on defense, Ndamukong Suh, what type of game will he play? Will he play under control, Charlton, or will he lose it and cost his team like Avontae Burfict did last year with Cincinnati against Pittsburgh when they had that game won, and Burfict decided to go out and get a couple roughing penalties and put Pittsburgh in field goal range. So, this is a very interesting matchup. A lot of the media people want to say, well, the Dolphins are coming playing in Pittsburgh is going to be cold. Well, the last time I checked, the Steelers had to play on the same day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So they're going to be cold also. And I don't care whether you play in Green Bay, Pittsburgh, or Chicago, Charlton, as a home team. You're still cold during game time. Because you don't sleep outside, you sleep in a warm house.
Yeah.
You only play outside. So, it affects all players. It matters how much time you spend on the heaters versus wanting to be out on the field. And you're only going to be out on the field, Charlton. There's no drive in the NFL really anymore that lasts more than 5 to 6 minutes. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you can't stay outside for 5 to 6 minutes, you shouldn't even dress for the game.
Well, Big C.
I don't discount the Dolphins in this game, Charlton, because they're still sipping on that champagne from that first season.
Can any of those guys even walk from the guys that went undefeated for the 72 Dolphins, Big C?
Yes, they can. And I really want Charlton, who just celebrated a birthday 2 days ago, Mercury Morris.
Oh, okay.
He celebrated his 70th birthday.
Happy birthday.
His 70th birthday. And you think about it. This was the first team in the NFL, Charlton, that had 3 running backs that played on the same team that all had 1,000-yard seasons. The Miami Dolphins with Larry Johnson, Jim Kick, and Mercury Morris.
Wow.
All 1,000-yard backs with the same NFL franchise being on the roster at the same time.
Well, that's incredible knowledge, Big C. The Dolphins quarterback Matt Moore, the veteran's done a decent job filling in for Tannehill. But something that you brought up about players that show up to play, whether it's a playoff game or whether it's the regular season, guys that you can always count on. We always talk about the great Big Ben Roethlisberger. You can count on him in a game. I like Antonio Brown as one of the best receivers in the NFL, and Le'Veon Bell running the football. I think he had over 200 yards rushing just a couple of weeks ago. But I think about what it means to the Steelers, and this is one of those heritage programs that you used to see the team that has championships under the Rooney family, and it's just a team that I think that sometimes people overlook the Steelers because usually when they don't make the AFC Championship game, it's because of an injury, Big C. This is a team that has a look. If they get past the Dolphins, they could meet New England or even Kansas City in the AFC Championship game because I think they'll win at least 2 rounds of playoff games. Big C, your thoughts on that if Big Ben's healthy?
Well, Charlton, they can do that, but this is also the first time in an NFL playoff game that you've had 2 players lead that have gained 200 yards in a regular season game in the same season.
Yeah.
And Bell and Ajayi. This is the first time this has occurred. So, but Ben, as you said, has to stay healthy, Charlton. But it's not so much Ben, it's his receiving core.
Yeah.
You know what Brown can do. But, how much can Brown do in the playoffs?
Wait, is UPS playing in this game, Big C? Did you just do a plug for UPS? Okay. Yeah, that's true.
It's the rest of the receiving core.
Yeah.
How much will they do? How much can Ben rely on them in the cold? They've had some injuries. They've had some inconsistency with, especially when you think of Green, the tight end. They've had, he's been banged up the last couple of stretch the field down the seam to get ground open on the outside of the action.
Yeah, and that's a great thing too, Big C. And you know this team, there's something about, you know, the movie Concussion, and it was filmed actually, I think they used Heinz Field with the great Will Smith and Dr. Amaro. The Concussion movie was based on the Pittsburgh Steelers, Big C, and their legendary team. Now this defense doesn't have, they're not like the Steel Curtain, but remember when they had Troy Polamalu and they reached the 3 Super Bowls from 2005 up to 2010, the Pittsburgh Steelers were like the New England Patriots of the AFC or the Seattle Seahawks of the NFC. So they have a guy named Harrison. I think he's about 95 years old. Did you say he and Murky Morris are the same age, Big C? And he's still breathing on defense. I don't know what type of vitamins he's taking, but I know I want me some of those, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, James Harrison has been a freak of nature in the NFL for a long time, Jonathan.
Yeah.
This guy, you know, he has no quit in him. The motor's always running. You think about it, he's a 38-year-old rush in the NFL. And so he's playing against average of guys that are 10 years younger than him, Jonathan. And he's holding his own and has dominated a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see in a lineup at 38 years old, Jonathan, and not producing it. There's a lot of guys that 10, 12 years younger than you that are chopping at the bit, but they just can't get the job done, Jonathan. But he's so intelligent. He's seen everything you can see as a defensive player in the NFL. So he recognizes so much, and it's hard to replace experience.
Yeah.
You can always bring speed to the game, Jonathan, but anybody can run and not know where they're running to. But when you have the experience and expectation of what's going to occur on plays, Jonathan, it gives you an advantage, and that's what the Steelers have in that linebacking core that they have, which is not taking a second fiddle to any linebacking core in the NFL as a player. And that's been the core of that defense forever. Even back when the Steel Curtain days, people talked about their front line.
Yeah.
But they always had 3 great linebackers, Jonathan. Whenever the Steelers have played, they've always had 3 to 4 great linebackers.
Well, Big C, you bring up a great point, and the Steelers, imagine how great that organization has been, and it goes back to Terry Bradshaw saying that, you know, the coach is a big motivator pretty much, but we know Tomlin's more than a motivator. He's been, you know, he has a Lombardi trophy just like Chuck Noll had one, and Cowher has one too, Big C, so you can't knock anyone with a championship. There's a lot of guys who haven't even been to a Super Bowl, let alone have one. But one of the things I do love about this matchup with the Steelers and the Dolphins, it reminds me of going back into the day in the 1970s when you had the Pittsburgh Steelers and they had Franco Harris and they had Terry Bradshaw and Lynn Swann and all the great Mean Joe Green, Dwight White, you know, all those great players. And you talked about Murphy Morris, and again, congratulations, Mr. Morris, turning 70 years old. They've had so many things that the NFL has celebrated, Big C, when it comes to championships. Do you think any of that matters to the old players, or is this new generation, do they not even care about what great franchises they represent, Big C?
Well, we're talking about, I don't think that it does. Like when we talked about it, this is the Mimi generation.
Yeah.
And we've talked about old coaches being recycled who cannot identify with the young players of the leagues now, whether it's hockey, basketball, or football. You have to be more in touch. And so when you run out and try to coaches 65, 70 years old, and trying to get them to identify with these younger players, it's like you're asking these players that were not even born during the heritage times of these franchises. And I like in this game more than, you know, the Steelers of the old, but I like what they used to do against the Houston Oilers when you used to look at those playoff teams. And that's what this Dolphin and Steelers game reminds me of. When the Oilers came to town, David Vasilini was the quarterback. They had Mike Winford, wide receiver.
Oh, yeah.
Earl Campbell was a running back. And you know, the Oilers technically won the game. They didn't have any replay back in those days. But Renfro called a pass in the corner of the end zone. Yeah. And got both feet down and slid out of the end zone. The official said he wasn't there. So it was like a miraculous reception when they beat the Raiders. Yeah. But you know, this is one of those games that reminds me of that type of game. You have a dominant running back in a giant, just like you had with Earl Campbell. Yeah. You have some decent receivers with Landry on the outside. They're Dolphins. With the Dolphins, you have a quarterback in Matt Moore who reminds me a lot of Dan Pastorini back in those days. Yeah. He's a guy who can do the job. He's not a flashy quarterback, but he knows how to play the game. Man, I love the way you. I love the way you can blend the current guys, the ESPN generation, to guys that were playing before ESPN was launched, Big C. And just bringing up those names, you realize that
these stellar programs, they're the same programs that are constantly playing for a championship. So I love this time of year when we get these what you call heritage programs, and they're always able to compete for a championship. So I'm so proud of the organizations and how they've been able to do that over the years, Big C. And another a big thing that really stands out in my mind when it comes to the NFL playoffs, and I know it means a lot to you too. When I look at this final game coming up, and I want to say this segment is sponsored by United Labor Guaranteed Life Insurance up to $100,000. We're endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. We also work with all of the unions under the AFL-CIO, and we're looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers because we simply want to put people back to work. So tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. But Big C, one of the teams that I don't want to say this because they're not my favorite teams, but I can't deny how great their organizations have been. One of the teams, I would not be surprised if they're in the NFC Championship game, and that's the New York Giants at 8-5, going into the Green Bay Packers at 10-6 at Lambeau Field. The great Eli Manning is 8-1 in his last 9 playoff games, even though he's tend to struggle at times. 8-1 in his last 9 playoff games. I think he has the best record in the playoffs, Big C. Your thoughts? That game is Sunday, 4:40 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. The great Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Aaron Andrews are doing that play-by-play. The Packers are favored by 4.5 at home. The over-under is 44.5, Big C, and that's going to be played in the cold weather. Your thoughts on that game and the great Eli Manning being 8-1 in his last 9 playoff games, Big C?
Well, he might be 8-1 his last 9 playoff games, Chuck, but what has he been in his last 3 regular season games?
Yeah.
That's the more important stat, Charlton, is that how he has looked in the cold weather in his last 3 playoff games, Charlton. We saw the game that they played against Dallas,
yeah,
where the Giants only put up 10 points on the scoreboard, so that means 1 touchdown, Charlton. We saw the game that they played against the Eagles. They put up 19 points, Charlton, and only 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
So when you look at the offensive productivity of the Giants, they haven't gotten it done, and that comes from the quarterback position. Now, a lot of people are going to get on these receivers about being down in Miami that's past all that they had, Charlton.
Yeah.
But no one has talked about lackluster play of Eli Manning over the last 3 weeks.
That's true.
Okay? No one has been negative on Eli Manning, and so I think that the media found an outlet and an excuse not to get on Eli Manning, Charlton, if the Giants don't do well in this game, to go over what he's done in the past month. So, they got the receivers out there for them to write a story about. But Eli Manning, to me, is the situation in this game. Aaron Rodgers, we know what he's done over the past month and a half in the NFL. He's been on a heater. I mean, he's gone 6-0 in the last 3 games, even though he's had a lot of help from Jordan Nelson and that defense that has cut their point production in half. Because what they've been giving up, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, the quarterbacks in these 2 games are the determining factors, not anybody else. They both have outstanding defenses. But the quarterbacks, we have a red-hot Aaron Rodgers against the lukewarm Eli Manning, Charlton.
Yeah.
Will that lukewarm Eli Manning show up for this game?
Well, he's always found a way, and I thought you were joking about it when you first said it, but you can count on Manning for at least 1 or 2 picks in a game because he likes to make the games fair for the other team, or maybe he goes to Las Vegas. I'm not sure which one it is, Big C, but he is a guy that's 9-1 actually 8-1 over the last 9 games. But you're right. What have you done? I think Janet Jackson got a lot of guys in trouble when she came out with that song, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" A lot of women start asking, what have you done for me lately? And so maybe that might get Manning in trouble for this game. And when you look at Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people don't like him because he's smug, and they say he's selfish with the discount double check. But you can't deny that the guy's a performer, and this is his chance to show that they're not washed up. And when he says relax, it's not a game they can relax on, Big C. The last time they played the Giants at Lambeau Field, the Giants beat them. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, that is true, Charlton, but Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs really has not done much since they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's been some time coming, that he's going to be able to go out and get them to that point again. He and Eli Manning basically in the same boat. Since their both last Super Bowl appearance, they've been mediocre quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
And this is a turning point in both of their careers, Charlton. This will establish which one of the two is the better. But like I said, Rodgers has been lights out in the past month and a half of the NFL season. Yeah. And Eli Manning's been lukewarm. But, I don't see Eli Manning getting hot in this game because he has to come out with more fire in his belly than what you see. Every time I see Eli Manning, I wonder, Does he care about the game? Now, people always rate him as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
But I got to look at him. Is he a leader on his teammates? He can throw a pick and he's like, oh, well, what the hell?
Yeah.
We get the ball back. Our defense to get it for him. So, these are the things that I look at with him. I don't see him challenging his receivers.
Yeah.
I don't see him getting into it with coaches periodically, which you'll see other quarterbacks sit there and stand off with a head coach.
Yeah.
I just see that Eli Manning always been accepted because he's Peyton's little brother.
Well,
and so that's always been his mindset.
When you look at the matchup, Jenkins versus Jordan, the Packers wide receiver and Jordy Nelson, and while the coverage from Beckham is going to be always something they focus on the cameras, Jordy Nelson's been playing really good football for the Packers. But is this a game also where, and I don't even think Beckham cares, Big C, but because he's under the spotlight, he likes the spotlight. That's why he does his hair kind of like Dennis Rodman. You don't know what color it's going to be. He's kind of the pretty boy in New York City and the Big Apple, a lot like how Joe Namath partied back in the days with the Jets. I think Beckham can come out and have a spectacular game. If they get this kid the ball, he can turn what you call yards after catch, just like Jerry Rice did. He makes it very dangerous. I don't know who to go with in this game, Big C, but they are giving the Packs a 4.5-point favorite, 44.5. Is the over, under. Again, you think that's a good, or does Las Vegas know something that we don't know? Because the Giants normally don't lose when they go on the road. They knocked off San Francisco several years ago when Harbaugh was the coach and Alex Smith was the quarterback. They came in the candlestick, same type of situation, and they won. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they go back further than that when they knocked off San Francisco. When Phil Simms, when Jeff Hostetler was the quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody thought the 49ers would three-peat. I believe it was in 1989, 1990.
Joe Montana.
When, Marshall knocked Montana out. Basically, it was the end of Montana's career with the 49ers when he broke his collarbone and ruptured his spleen on that play. And
that's good knowledge. Yeah.
They went on to win the Super Bowl behind Jeff Hostetler. Otis Anderson had a great game rushing against the Bills down in Tampa. And everybody remembers Scott Norwood from wide right to give the Giants their second Super Bowl win as an organization.
Yeah.
But, this is a team that has a history of doing that, going on the road winning. But Charlton, they haven't gone on the road and played a team as hot as the 49ers, not the 49ers, but the Green Bay Packers in any of those runs. That's the key. They've gone out and they've played teams that were content. But they haven't gone out and faced the Packers. Right now, when Aaron Rodgers told everybody to relax a couple of months ago, that he had a grip on this, he does have a grip on this. And like I said, Eli Manning, Charlton, hasn't done anything spectacular. Even though the media won't let you know that. But any fan who looks statistically and says, hey, this guy has not done anything, unless you're a Giant fan, you got to realize he's been very pedestrian.
Yeah, and Big C, I think you're right about that. It should be a great game. Arguably the marquee matchup of the weekend for that game. You have the Giants going into Lambeau Field, which is another place where you want to see football. And I know everybody want the new sexy stadium, Big C. They're building one down in Atlanta. They're building new stadiums everywhere, it seems, over the last 10 years. But there's nothing like Lambeau where they just remodeled that stadium, and I really appreciate the way they come out and support the Pack. And there's one more thing I want to touch on while we're still in the NFL is the Cowboys Gregory was suspended for a year for the Dallas Cowboys because of a substance abuse problem. How can a guy making several millions of dollars not keep his nose clean? But some guys need treatment more than they do need playing. And Jerry Jones said he likes the guys that can make plays, doesn't care if he has a drug abuse problem or not. I hope they can get the young man some help. He's a heck of an athlete, but he can be a heck of a person if they could just get him some help. But Big C, I always have an issue with the NFL suspending players for substance abuse because they give all these players some type of substance to get through the pain. But if it's not on their list, then they say you got to sit out or bring some money back. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, Charles, you're so right of the hypocritical policing of the NFL. You work in an industry where your job is that you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Okay? That happens all the time. And it's okay if the team injects you with an opiate substance.
Yeah.
They give you the pill form of an opiate substance, Charlton. But if you go out and get something that's more natural, marijuana, and everybody knows what it is. It's been legal in so many states.
Yeah, California now.
California, Oregon, Washington, it's legal. but it's still banned on the NFL substance list. So you can't be in an area where it's being smoked and take it into your body because now all of a sudden you can be suspended. But it's very hypocritical of the NFL. If you go back to the old days, Charlton, when players use pharmaceuticals, illegal pharmaceuticals during the game. You know, people used to always wonder why Lawrence Taylor had such a motor, all right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he did anything, but everybody wondered why he had such a motor. You know, what would make you run that way all the time?
I think Jose Canseco told us about everybody's motor, Big C, so you're not saying anything that people are going to deny anymore, Big C.
Leo Romanowski was the same way, Charlton. You know,
he may, if you seen Bill on TV, he may still be the same way, Big C.
but you know, when the NFL can give you any types of substance you want, and everybody who saw the movie Concussion,
yeah.
You looked at the Steelers doctor who was played by Alex Baldwin, who sit there and talked about the painkillers and shots that he gave players that basically were illegal, but you gave them to them. As long as that doctor administered to you, Charlton, you could play. You could pass a drug test because the doctor would say, hey, I gave you this. Okay, all right, since you're a doctor and you gave it to him, it's all right, even though you couldn't get a prescription for it at home.
Right.
All right? But it's okay if the team drugs up a player, but if the player seeks to self-medicate, then the team wants to punish him. I look at, Charlton, that every team should have a policeman on the team that goes around and makes sure that the organization is clean all the time. Don't send a guy in from the league, but you pay these players so much money that hiring a guy for a couple $100,000 a year, he was two guys, Charlton, to make sure that the players stay clean is not a huge investment, but it's a huge investment on the other side because you keep that player on the field that can be productive for your organization. I remember a great NBA player, known him for a long time, the Chief.
Yeah.
Now the Chief started out there where you live at. He came out of the University of Creighton.
Yeah.
He was the Warriors' first-round draft pick in 1975. They got rid of him about 4 years later for this kid out of Purdue named Joe Barry Carroll, who everybody said would be one of the greatest centers in the NBA. The only thing he's known for is Sean Kemp dunking over him.
Yeah. He still having nightmares about that dog, because he's still having nightmares about that dog.
All right, so when you think about those things, and the Chief, for many years, lived on smoking the cannabis. Because when you think about the pounding that a big man takes, Charlton, up and down the hardwood floor in the NBA for 82 regular season games, plus some preseason, and the Celtics were always in the playoffs. As a matter of fact, he has been stopped in airports on 3 separate occasions for having marijuana in his luggage. But, you know, if an NFL player takes it, they say, well, it hinders his performance. Show me what player, Charlton, that has ever been on marijuana in any league that you can sit there and say his performance is less.
Yeah.
I've always thought that their performance is better because they're more relaxed in that environment when they go there, and they're pain-free mostly.
Yeah.
So when you sit there and say that a natural herb is bad for these players performing, but it's okay to give them opiates in pill form or injection, and that's good for them.
Yeah.
And if it causes organ damage, that's okay.
I think you're right about that, Big C. That makes a very big point. And when it comes down to that, they got to find a way to keep all these players healthy. I want to say this segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance, with the leaders in the country when it comes to final expense. We're also looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers because we simply want to put people back to work. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. Also, Big C, just a little side note. In the NHL last night, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they were trying to become one of the winningest teams as far as win streaks in the NHL, but that streak was snapped, and they lost 5-0 to the Washington Capitals at the Verizon Center Thursday night, breaking a 16-game winning streak. So congratulations for getting to that point of having 16 in a row. They didn't quite get to 17, but it's always going to be great for the NHL to have teams that can set streaks, Big C. And also, I want to say this final segment is sponsored by Beneath This Wings Foundation.org and CYNN Entertainment when it comes to promotion. Cynthia Evans, the best in Northern California. Big C, as we close out our last segment here in Sacramento, California, the Sacramento Kings in the NBA, they're playing right now at home tonight. It's about 7:30 tip-off against the LA Clippers. And funny thing, I saw Ice Cube, the great musician we talk about all the time. He was on one of the ESPN programs today, and he was saying how he couldn't care less if the Clippers left LA or not because it's still Laker territory. Now, the Clippers coming to Sacramento doesn't have the same cachet as the Lakers coming, even though the Clippers are a better team right now. Do you think that LA, when you talk about teams in the NFL and everybody wants to go to LA, if a team left LA, they don't seem to have the same love even though they sell out. Could the Clippers be the team that left Los Angeles? Everybody else is talking about going to LA. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they've always been thought about y'all as a secondary tenant in the Staples Center.
Yeah.
They originally were down in San Diego, the San Diego Clippers, for years. And they toured down there with really not much fanfare. Charlton already had some great NBA players throughout their history. But when they came to LA and the Staples Center, and they became a better team in that arena, that level field the Lakers never waned.
Yeah.
The Lakers had that establishment down there in Los Angeles. They've been there for a long time, ever since leaving Minneapolis and coming out west.
Yeah.
And they had the fan base of loyalists. They're like the Dodgers when they left Brooklyn and came to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
They're always going to be Dodgers fans. But teams who have come to LA, Charlton, that once that established teams have never received the love that anybody else has. You think about the Dodgers always doing that fan base down there.
Yeah.
The Anaheim Angels are not that far away, but who knows about the Anaheim Angels, Charlton? And they generally have had a better team in the last decade than the Dodgers, but it's still Dodger blue territory.
Yeah.
But when you think about the Clippers, and they haven't won anything, and LA is a city of winners.
Yeah.
When you think about the teams that have been there, they've all been to championships. Even the Rams have been to a Super Bowl against the Steelers. Even
Yeah.
though they did not win, they've been to a Super Bowl while they were in LA, and they went twice in St. Louis. So, this is a city that's built on winners. We know of the championships of the Lakers and the Dodgers, and even the LA Kings eventually won a championship in hockey. But if you're not winning in LA, and if you leave town, no one cares.
No, that's true.
Don't.
That's true. And it's always been that way in Los Angeles. And looking at some of the NBA games just played last night, you have the Atlanta 111-92 over Orlando, Charlotte 123, Oklahoma City 112, and then you had the Bulls 106-96 over actually 94 over Cleveland, Golden State 125-117 over Portland, the Clippers 115-106 over Memphis, and Miami 107-122 over the Kings, and that was on Wednesday. Thursday night's game, Indiana beat upon Brooklyn 121-109. It was Detroit 115 for Charlotte 114, and Toronto 101 over Utah 93, which also plays well at home. Atlanta and New Orleans played, and then Oklahoma City against Houston. So there's so much talk here in Sacramento about an organization that has a new arena. It's a kind of team that does not have a winning record here at home, but they could turn things around because they have a home stretch going down the final 40 games. Big C, they'll have most of those games at home. I think if they can find some chemistry, they're deciding they're going to keep Cousins on the team. I think he is an all-star player. But what is it going to take for them to even make the number 8 seed in the Western Conference? Do you see that something that can happen along with Portland? They have a young team as well. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I think people get so sold on saying, well, we got a big man, and that's what you build an organization around, Charlton. But when you look at the top teams in the NFL, which one of those teams, I mean, not the NFL, but the NBA, which one of those teams has lived through their center?
Yeah.
None of them, Charlton.
Yeah.
None of those teams, even before Durant left Oklahoma City, they didn't have a center that they ran the offense through. When you look at Houston, that offense down there runs through James Harden. They let Dwight Howard go, even though he was considered one of the best big men in the NBA.
Yeah.
And you look at Cleveland. They can go out there and LeBron will end up playing center. And he'll be the worst shooter on the floor, but he'll be the center.
Yeah.
Even though he's the best player in the NBA, he's the worst shooter on the team.
Yeah.
And you look at Golden State. They don't care if somebody's out there who's over 16.
No, not at all.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't look for a pivot. Everybody shoots the threes on that team. So to say that Cousins has to be in Sacramento for them to build an organization around, Charlton, really doesn't make sense in this modern day of the NBA because he even wants to go outside and shoot three-point shots, Charlton.
And
I've always thought that, if you have a big man on a team now, is that you have a slow team.
Yeah.
That's what you have in the NBA. I mean, you think about Roy Hibbert, who was with Indiana for several years. they had to let him go because the team was slow waiting to get up and down the court.
Yeah.
Even though they made it to the NBA Finals with him against the Lakers, they were still a slow team getting up and down the court. But when you look at the past half-dozen NBA champs, who has been the pivot on these teams, Charlton? They've had no dominant center other than San Antonio Spurs, and Tim Duncan wasn't a dominant center. Everybody thought about him as a power forward throughout his career.
Well,
so you don't have that guy anymore, Dalton, who's the big bruiser inside, who's going to sit down in the paint, who's going to make a difference. Everybody's out on the wing shooting the 2s and 3s.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the day when Sacramento was playing at the Arco Arena, they named it Sleep Train and Power Balance. Now they have this beautiful state-of-the-art Golden One Center with this $10 million bunny rabbit in front, and it says, keep your hands off. I think people, if you pay $10 million for something, you should at least be able to touch it, Big C. I don't know why you can't do that. But I think this team, when they had Divac as a center and they were making championship runs, Weber was the main guy. They also went through Bibby, and they had, they had Bobby Jackson and Doug Christie. They had a nucleus of guys that could come in and play. So I think they're trying to get back to that style of winning. But just in the final segment, Big C, I just want to mention to everyone that Big C Sports is also offering athletic insurance. Whether you're a pro, college, or a high school team, we can get you covered. Tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And Big C, as we go on to the final stretch of this playoff weekend, and everybody's looking forward to it, we have the college football national championship kicking off actually on Monday night. What are you looking forward to mostly this NFL football playoff weekend, Big C? Go right ahead, sir.
Well, Charlton, I'm really excited about this college football championship. When you look at Alabama's perspective, Dalen Hurd was the first true rookie freshman, or basically freshman, we say rookie because we lost up in the league.
Yeah.
But the first true freshman to win Offensive Player of the Year in the ACC since the late Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
He was the last true freshman to win Offensive Player of the Year in that conference. So you think about the rarefied company that he's in. Also, Herschel Walker won a championship while he was at the University of Georgia. Hurd, I don't know if he'll win it this year, but he'll have opportunities to win it because he'll be around a couple more years.
Yeah.
I really like Clemson, what they've done, Jonathan, to get back to this game consecutive years and to have that offense basically intact from last year. That's the biggest difference between the two teams. Clemson has an offense that has a history of being in this game.
Yeah.
Alabama has an offense that they had to retool to get to this game. So I like the guys of Clemson who have the balance and know what it's like mentally to be there.
Yeah.
The pressure is not on their quarterback, Deshaun Watson, like it is on Jalen Hurd this year. And having a new offensive coordinator, I think Hurd may struggle in this game. When we look at the NFL playoffs, Charlton, now the season has started for real, okay? This is win or go home for good. So you have to play because that's not next week. You can't take a loss and say, hey, we're still in the division hunt. You take a loss now, and the only thing you're hunting for is one of those Ziploc bags.
I understand. Nobody wants that kind of Ziploc bag, Big C. And something that I love, too, about this football season, just seeing these heritage programs where you have the Steelers and the Dolphins and you have the Giants and the Packers and they're in the playoffs. The Raiders are in the playoffs for the first time since it's about 13 seasons for them, and just exciting to see football and this type of heritage programs, Big C. And you talked about some of the old-timers that have played this game that actually made the game great, and I hope that some of these young players can pay homage to some of the old guys, the Hall of Fame guys that are always going to be loving and watching NFL football. Big C, your final thoughts just on the weekend. Anything else you're looking forward to that gets you to get up out of bed on a nice, cold, windy morning back down south, Big C? Your thoughts? Yeah.
I don't know how the rest of these go home.
Yeah.
My baby's not used to freezing, okay?
Yeah.
She can get wet, but she's not used to ice.
That's funny.
That's my biggest concern. But, I'm looking forward to this outstanding weekend, Charlton.
Yeah.
When you think about it, we're going into the new year.
Yeah.
2017, with everything on the line. The college football championship, the start of the NFL playoffs, the NBA is at its third of the way through the
Yeah.
The NFL just came off the longest winning streak, in a couple decades, Charlton.
Yeah.
With the Columbus Blue Jackets. So sports is healthy right now. Sports is doing good.
Well,
and if sports is doing good in America, people have a lot of good things to pay attention to.
Well, basically, I do appreciate that very much. Coming to you live from downtown Sacramento near the Sacramento River. Beautiful downtown Sacramento, heading over to the Golden One Center for the LA Clippers while they'll take on the Sacramento Kings. There are guys driving by in their Escalades. I guess they put an extra sound system because some of the guys, you can hear them pounding. The bass is bumping so loud, basically, I can hear it from a couple of blocks away. I want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. Follow Charlton and Big C Sports. And we always tell you the number one sports company in the United States is iHeartRadio. And Big C Sports is the number one sports show in the universe. We're the only show that does it freestyle. And we always tell you there's never any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any woman going through that garbage, just call 911. She should never have to go through that type of garbage on her own. And as we always tell you, every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports. And we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.